Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Insider podcast number 14. It's already 3 months in, and we're already at the number 14, which is super exciting. So far, I have had a lot of support of you. The podcast downloads are growing. The audience is growing, which I'm very thankful. There are people from everywhere, from the US, from Europe, from everywhere. So thank you, everybody. And if you're from somewhere far away and you found out about the podcast somehow randomly, feel free to contact me on the social media, and that I will tell you later. And I want to respond to some feedback I've gotten. A lot of people are telling me, okay, people are saying that your podcast is very long and the conversation is long and it's hard to focus on the conversation for more than 1.5 hours sometimes. So I want to tell you that I'm trying to tell the stories of the guests which are on the podcast so you can know better about them and learn from their experiences. And those stories are very fascinating, and it's not an easy story to say. So I cannot say a story, I cannot get out a story of them in an hour or less. It's not possible. I'm trying to keep it short as possible, but this is the length that the podcast will be. So my suggestion will be for you to split the way you listen to the podcast. Listen maybe half of the podcast, then listen the next half whenever you feel like it. You can split even in more than 2 parts. I will make this example. If you like Lord of the Rings, the book is long. It's just good books are long. Or Matrix, 3 movies. Lord of the Rings, also 3 movies. They didn't do 1. Nobody complained that there is only 1 movie. And I don't split the episodes for you. I leave the full episode every Monday. So you are in charge of how you're going to split it and listen to it. And that's why the episode is once a week. Because if you have 1 week to listen 1.5 hour, you can split it in as many bites as you like. And trust me, even if it's feel contra-intuitive in the beginning, I do that with other podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience. 3 hours I split it, and whenever I go back to it I remember what I've listened so far. So yeah, feel free to do that. That was my suggestion. And as I said, if you want to have more important, famous and interesting guests, and just to, not that the guests I have so far are not, but the bigger guests, they need a bigger audience. So support the podcast on Instagram at TCI Podcast, support the podcast on Facebook or LinkedIn at the Creative Insider pages, and feel free to share, to subscribe, to give a good rate, to share with other creatives or friends or family or whoever, so the podcast is growing and we can get more interesting guests, more famous. If you're curious about someone, you can suggest it to me, contact me. I try to respond to everybody. And okay, that's it. And thank you. And now I'm going to introduce you my guest of today. That's Elizabeth Steinberg. She is from South Africa. She lives in LA. We recorded the podcast through Zencastr, which is a platform, and we have talked through Los Angeles and Frankfurt. It was so challenging because of the time difference, but I hope it's very good. The talk for me was super inspirational. She owns the digital agency Martian and Sons. Among her clients, there are Microsoft. Hi, Bill Gates. And she is a super powerful, inspiring figure, woman, designer, digital designer, and last but not least, mom, wife. It was super cool to talk to her. She was super humble, but in the meanwhile, super inspiring. So yeah, enjoy the conversation. Have fun. Bye from me for now.
Just like that.
Hello everybody, welcome to this new episode, and we have today Elizabeth Steinberg. Hi Elizabeth.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? This is our first intercontinental podcast.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting to kind of come on the podcast. So for the audience, I don't know you personally, but I know you from Instagram. And I'm so happy you had a very positive response to my to my direct message on. Actually, it was a message to the site of your company, which is Martians and Sons.
Yes, yeah.
And this is I want to introduce it a little bit. So I was just very new on Instagram, and I was looking for creative pages and design pages, and I went on by accident. I went on the Microsoft design page, and there was a post, and your company was stuck there. So I thought, okay, probably this is some very big design company. And then I opened the page of your Instagram, and I was like surprised that you have not this big followership, but you've done this great work for Microsoft. So I contacted you, and here you are.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, we are. I think I'm embracing the social media a little bit more now. I didn't really do a lot. I'm the owner of the company, but also I'm in charge of the social media. So I'm trying to get more followers and work our way and posting more. So I'm glad that you contacted us, and yeah, I'm also always happy to see other entrepreneurs and creatives creating their own platform. And for me, that was very exciting when I see what you're doing.
So you are in LA currently, right?
Yes, in Los Angeles.
But when we had our first phone call to set up the podcast, you told me that also the company it's also set up partly in LA, partly in Seattle. Am I correct?
Yes, so we are three partners, and one of our partners are up in Seattle. He's kind of like the head of the operations.
And I'm very curious because I don't know. Can you tell me why that name? What does the name mean? Why it's
Oh,
called Martian and Son?
it was. I think we all have different opinions or different reasons for the name. I originally the name came from I used to live in Sheffield in North England, and there were these companies that are, and Sheffield's a steel company, and they have always these family businesses that does really well crafted metalwork, and they always have and Sons and company at the end. And I always thought that sounds like a company that really is good with their craft, and they really have passion, and they have a family unit. And I think it started off with that, but also, in America, they call you an alien if you're an immigrant. If you have, you're a legal alien is actually a word they use. And I think those two combined has made sound like a fun name. And I wanted to show something that we are really good with our craft and we have passion, but we also are a family of people. And I also have two sons, so I thought maybe one day they will take over my the company. But that's kind of where it comes from.
So you are the one that came up with the name of the company. Are you actually one of the founders of the company, or?
Yes, I am one of the founders.
Cool. And how long time ago did you found the company?
It was a very slow start. I would say we started in 2015, but we actually only got traction, and I would say have a proper company, although we were a proper company in 2015, but I would say 2017 is kind of when we got on the map and got, proper office and clients. And I wouldn't say there was like, oh, this day was the day we started, but it was kind of a slow progression. And I think in 2017, we changed our entity from an LLC to a S Corp. And that was kind of where I feel like is the start of the company.
And you have also a very interesting logo at least on Instagram. Does that also hide some special meaning behind, or?
Oh, you know what? I feel like we have a new logo every other year. Our first logo was actually also, again, try to get back to the minimalist, the purest form of design, where we had these three colors coming together, which was kind of our disciplines, was the idea that we are design, code, and motion. But now I see our logo, and our logo is very organic. And I don't think a logo itself is maybe the brand itself, but it's just very, we kind of play around with the logo. So we always have that M stamp, but the inside, the negative space around the M always change. So every year there's something else, or when we have a little logo animation before our reels, we try to change it up a little bit, so it's not always the same.
So I think that was a very cool introduction to the whole story, because I get to know a lot of the people that are on the podcast or during the podcast, and during the preparation of setting up the whole episode, I don't want to get to know too much about the guest and the background, because I wanted to be very real when we're actually recording, and I can get surprised from your answers, your story, and everything. So I want to start back from the beginning, because a lot of the people that are listening to the podcast, although they know that you're in LA, can hear you're not talking with a typical accent from the US. So
Yeah.
you are South African, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Which city are you from?
I am actually from a very small town. It's called Leidenburg, but people usually don't know where that is. So I usually just say I'm 3 hours east of Pretoria, which is our administrative capital. And then the last city I lived in was Johannesburg. So I kind of feel like Johannesburg is also one of my hometowns, but I'm originally from a really small town that has small amount of people.
And what was the moment in your life, or the situation in your life, where you got interested in creativity and you decided that you want to develop yourself into the direction of creativity, and started your path?
I don't think there was like one moment and then I just knew it. I think I've always liked art and design, and from school I always designed logo for people or posters, and I in high school I took art as one of the electives. So I think it was just like a natural progression. It's the only thing that I really loved and was thinking I could maybe pursue as a career. And I was also very lucky that my parents were very supportive. So they were definitely trying to find something that I like. And now that I have kids, I know that once your kid loves something, you really want to make sure that, you want to see if it actually is going to stick and you kind of run with it. So after high school, I just applied to a whole bunch of colleges and universities, and with different types of design courses. And then I got into this university course for information design, fine arts degree, and then it kind of started from there, I guess.
What is information design?
So information design, it was part of it's kind of graphic design, but I would say it takes on visual communication and graphic design. It's kind of a overarching course. It was part of the fine arts faculty, so it still touches on all kinds of fine art, history of art, drawing, painting. But the information design was all about how information is in how do you put a hierarchy and design around information. So it's typography, marketing. I mean, it's quite a wide subject. So it did kind of help with, it's basically visual communication and how you show a message.
This was at the university, you said?
Yes, this was at the University of Pretoria.
Of Pretoria. Was it a very difficult to get into that faculty and that subjects, or how was your?
Yeah, it was very difficult. You had to show a portfolio, I didn't really have a portfolio, to be honest. They give you certain things you have to do, and then, to be honest, I don't even remember what it was. And then you go in for an interview, and I think they only pick, I want to say 60 maybe, or maybe a little bit more. But I know that we were quite a lot in the beginning, and after 4 years, we were whittled down to maybe 24, 25. So it was a very hard, very challenging course, but it was definitely where, it was definitely great foundation that I've learned.
And was that already a master program or a bachelor program, or how did it?
No, it was a bachelor honors program. So after 4 years, you can get into the master's program.
And after you graduated, you went further for a master program, or how did you move further on in your life after you have graduated
So
the
after I
University of
graduated,
Pretoria?
yeah, I just I applied to a lot of companies. I actually went on a little road trip around the country and got interviews at different agencies and different types of discipline, type of design companies. The great thing about the degree is that it was very wide. So you could become a print designer, a creative director at an agency. It's really, they did touch on all the disciplines of design and communication. So I got a job. My first job was at a really good company. Those days, there were not really many animation companies. I think there were probably 3, I think, in Joburg. And I got the job as the designer for the animation division of this company who did amazing stuff. They were really the forefront of technology. They had motion capture characters that that they were using for a television show on SABC1, which is our local broadcaster, actually SABC2. They did visual graphics for, they did broadcast graphics for all the channels. They did website design, CD-ROM, when CD-ROM was still, and DVDs where they were still, the new thing. So for me, that it was really, I was thrown into this amazing company that was just doing things I've never could imagine doing. And that's kind of where I would say that's where I actually got my exponential growth in knowledge of what I do know now. Even though I arrive at this company with not knowing anything, I hardly know what animation was. So it was an interesting turn, I would say.
But so you didn't have the experience to was already computer graphics animation, or was it what was the process? So you got introduced to what kind of you probably got introduced to the softwares in this company. So what kind of softwares did you get introduced into? What are the softwares that you use that back then or you use nowadays into the animation industry?
Yeah, so that's a cool question, because to be honest, when I arrived at this company, I did not know anything. I think I knew Photoshop maybe and Quark or something silly. And the first job I had, the first week, was to do a lower third for a channel, a network. And I didn't even know what the lower third was. So a lower third are those graphics that animates at the bottom of your TV screen with having someone's name on it. So, and that is done in After Effects. So I didn't know After Effects at all. And I literally had to learn After Effects within a week. And from there, I started doing more personal animation jobs just to learn and teach myself the software. We use Maya, and there was a software called Softimage, and then Flash for animation, for digital animation, for interactivity, and just all the Adobe products that we all now know still. So it was a very quick learning curve, but at the end, it's just a tool, and.
So I want just to tell the people that are listening that we are not paid to say the names of the
Oh.
software. So it's just so that I want the people to hear, because when I talk to a creative, I imagine that the listeners can listen this chat and have an overview of a possible path in their careers, and just to give them information. Okay, if somebody is listening and wants to get into animation, just go check out those softwares, start playing around with them, and maybe you can learn something, and maybe you can get a gig somewhere in some agency and start. And so you got this job, and how long did you stay at this company, your first company?
So I stayed about 2 years. And during that time, this company, I mean, they were a really big company, but I think they just were not very wise with the way they spent their money. And the company was starting to do, they lost a few contracts and they were not doing that well. So I decided, me and two other guys from the company we decided to leave, and we started another company, our own company. So, but during that time, maybe I should reverse a little bit again, because at my first company, I actually met the love of my life, and he was actually on his way to England. So the day I arrived, he put in his resignation to the company. So our paths kind of crossed for 1 month. So I met him in that month, and we kind of got along. And after a month, he left the company, and he decided, because he was leaving to go to England. And during that time, I think we started a relationship. And when he left to England, we have had this long distance relationship, sort of. And when I started the second company with these colleagues of mine, I told them that I actually think I'm not going to stick around for another 2 years. I'm going to put 1 year of my of my sweat into this company, but then I might leave to England, because I've always wanted to go abroad. And it's one of those things that I feel like if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it. So for 2 years after this first company, I started another, the other company. And that was, it was a lot of work. Starting a company is very challenging. And we also had a lot of the clients from our previous job came to us. So we had to do the same amount of work, but with less people. And it was really late nights, but it was quite fun, because we're working for ourselves and we make our own rules. But it was quite hard work too.
But you were lucky enough to get the clients from the
yes, we
old
were very
company.
lucky. Yes, and I think I just because it was me and Jonathan and Hilton was kind of the head designer of this first company. D Labs was the name. And I do think the clients wanted him. They wanted him to work on the jobs. And when he left, they kind of followed him. So I would say I'm very lucky that we did have such a great talent to help with this starting of this company, because he was definitely helping getting everything in place and securing the deals.
And in which year is this happening? Around which year?
This was in 2003, I think. It shows my age. Yes, about 20 years ago. 2004, 3. Yes, 3. It was 2003.
Well, it sounds interesting. I think it's very funny. Funny. It's very interesting that you got to work for your first company, and you got to meet the love of your life. But after a month, you needed to start a intercontinental distance relationship. And I think that back then, that was the early years of Skype. But I'm not sure.
Was, yes. And he phoned me every day. He was very persistent. And to be honest, I was kind of like, I was very driven. So I was actually, it was very convenient to have a boyfriend, and I would say in quotation marks, but because he was not with me, so he didn't take my time, and I could work until 10, 11 at night and put all my time into this company. So for the first year, it worked out fine. And I did see him every 3 or 4 months. But yeah, it is interesting how things changed.
And so you started the company, worked at the company for a while, and then after you left for England, or
Yeah,
what
so
happened?
basically, he told me that I need to make a decision, which is I'm glad he did, because he said he would either come back to South Africa or I need to leave and come live with him. So I decided. Well, I already kind of decided a year ago. I just didn't know when because I was still having fun starting this company. So I left a year after I started this company with my two friends.
And was it hard for you to leave the company because it was basically the first company you have started? And I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs interviews, and they say that when you start a company, it's sort of like your kid, so it's like you take care of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And
It was like a kid, but it was it was just it was hard, but because I think I had that mindset of that it's just going to be a year or two and then I'm leaving. It wasn't something I had to decide. I decided within a month and it happened. It was a slow process and I knew that I'm just here to help starting it up and then I'm gonna leave. So it wasn't that difficult for me.
you went to England, and which city actually were you living together?
So he was he's a developer, a programmer. So he went to work for a company, a startup in Sheffield, in the north of England. And so for me, coming from a small town in the bottom of Africa, anything European was just wonderful. So for me, Sheffield was one of my favorite memories ever. I just loved Sheffield. It's just, I mean, you probably used to it, but for me, anything with cobblestones and castles and pubs and, for me, that whole culture was just wonderful. So Sheffield was where we lived for 2 years.
But in my imagination, I consider South Africa. I mean, it's of course, an African country, but I think it's from the sub-equatorial countries the most Europe influenced. If I mean, I imagine it that way. I've never been down there.
Yeah.
And did you did you have any cultural shock, a part of the environment
Oh,
change when you
yeah.
when you went to England?
Yeah, I think the cultural shock was I did not understand what they were saying.
Really?
My English was really bad. I have to say I was not good in English because my first language is Afrikaans and I definitely I couldn't understand what they were saying because their accents were really heavy. So I had to kind of they were speaking English. I mean, they were speaking English. It's just the accents of the Northerners are really different from the Southerners. So if they speak too fast, I was, had to kind of wait and understand and deravel their sentences. And then within a month, I was understanding what they were saying. So for me, that was the only kind of it's not really a cultural shock. It was just I had to kind of tweak my ear a little bit to understand. And then I think also in the north, I mean, I don't know if it's not England because I have lots of friends in London, but I feel the Northerners, they're just amazing friends, but they're really difficult to get into friendship groups. So it takes a little bit of time, but once you find your clan, they're really like amazing and they're friends for life. So I think that's maybe where I just had because coming fresh off the boat straight into a city that you don't know, it's difficult to make friends. It's it's just how do you make friends? So it's kind of like that was the first thing. But luckily, we met people through my partner's business, and he's the company he worked for. So yeah, after that, I think you just need one friend. To be honest, once you have one friend, it kind of snowballs to other things.
Yeah, I can tell you that I am. I'm living in Germany, but I'm originally from Bulgaria, which is an Eastern European country in Italy. And I came here through an Erasmus program in Europe. This is an exchange program among universities of different European countries. And when I came here, I got to know people from all around the world in Europe. And there was a group of students from Manchester, and there was also a group of students from lacrosse from America. And sometimes we were hanging out together, and I couldn't understand the Manchester guys. So they were sometimes talking English, and I was like, what the hell are they saying? And once we were me, a Manchester guy, and an American guy, and this guy from Manchester trying to tell me something, and I'm like, can you repeat one more time? I couldn't understand after 3 times, and I asked the American guy, I said, like, Nick, can you please translate for me? And he was like, I have no idea what he's saying. So so I think I think, and regarding the friendship thing, I think German people are also the same way. It's very hard to become friends with them, but once you're friends forever. And I have heard this analogy, which is very nice, that there are some people, some nations, the people in those nations are like peaches, because the peach is very soft on the outside, but the hard core, it's inside. So for example, Italians are very welcoming from the outside, but it's very hard to be friends forever. And the Germans are like nuts, because they're like super hard outside, but once you get in, then you're inside forever. So I think it's a cool analogy. And once you settled in England, how did you what was your career path?
Yeah, so when I arrived in England, I actually didn't have the right visa. So my visa was a working holiday visa, is what they called it that day. I don't even know if they still have those. And I don't think I was not allowed to work in the career that I studied. Like, I think you can do like low skill type work, like berry picking, or I'm not sure exactly what you can do. So luckily, my then boyfriend had a job, so I could stay with him, and he got provided the food and everything. So for that first year, I actually just had fun. To be honest, I explored the whole of England. We drove a lot of road trips. The music scene in Sheffield is amazing. It was just it was one of my best times of my life, and it's my 20s. And then when I got the right visa a year after that, and I just started freelancing and little jobs here and there. And then I had a friend in London, Susan, very talented designer, and we decided we're going to start a company. So the company would be her in London, me in Sheffield, and she would try to get clients, and then we'll split the work between two, because she's really good in branding and I was really good at animation. So we had that company for about a year, but then again, my boyfriend turned into my husband, because we got married in Sheffield. And he got an offer from his company. He worked at a tech startup that does these localization software for Disney. So they asked him if he wants to move to America to start help with the office that is inside Disney, actually in Hollywood. And we said yes. And to be honest, I never thought of America on my list. I mean, to be honest, I actually didn't even like Americans. It was like that stereotypical thing where there's a war and it's Bush and it's, just everything about Americans did not really appeal to me. And it also wasn't really a country that I was thinking of visiting. That was not on my bucket list. But the idea that we could actually get paid by a company to move there and to start and see how it is was very appealing to me, because, we can always come back if we want to come back. So it's kind of the decision we made. Yeah, we'll try it and see how it is.
So this was around 2006, or?
Yes,
something like,
2006. Yeah.
because you were talking about the war, and I think that was the hottest time of the war.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's yeah.
and so you started. For how long have you been freelancing with your friend in London?
Um, that was about a year, I think. I'm trying to go down the timeline now, but it was yeah.
So
It was
she was a brand. It was connected to a brand design.
yes, she's really good with branding and design, and she had lots of contacts, so that's also a great thing. And her contacts was very much steered towards events, so more experiential design. Where I don't know if you know what experiential design is, but it's more like an event. Uh, a brand needs to, for example, there was this one project we worked on, Visit London, and it wanted to show all the great things that London has to offer. So agencies will come up with these wacky, way cool ideas and how to advertise London, and then they'll come to agencies like us to help take these ideas to a further step with either design or motion or overall branding. So that's kind of how we got into that world.
And you did that for that year, and then when you find out how was starting over again in a complete new for you, it's your third continent then. So you went from Africa to Europe, and then 2006 LA. How were the first months and first years in LA? Was it very hard to
um,
settle in the US? Where your let's say, was your prejudice false about the US?
yes, it was totally false. I mean, I think it's just like any country, you have a stereotypical idea of. There's always all kinds of people in a country. So I think again, I was just so lucky that the company that got us there, they put us up in a place for a month until we found our own place. And we found this lovely little apartment in the middle of Hollywood, or kind of East Hollywood, which is was very scummy. I mean, Hollywood was very. I mean, I feel like it's all still very scummy. I think Hollywood sounds like it's glamorous, but it's a very dodgy area. And we literally moved into our apartment with 2 suitcases. We didn't have any furniture. I remember we went to IKEA just to get a mattress and cups, I think. And then this apartment we lived in was just a wonderful place. I still have amazing friends there. I felt like it was one of those sitcoms where, the guy across the road is your friend, and then you know everybody in the building. And I think that was almost like an instant family of friends, even though they were not, our bosom buddies, but they were definitely friends that made us feel like we are, welcomed. And they kind of gave us recommendations. They gave us hand-me-downs. Like we had like a TV from the guy upstairs, and pots and pans from the girl downstairs. So I think just living in an apartment building really helped us feeling much more integrated into the city.
And so your husband was started his job at the company that was, is it a Disney company? Or it was
It
working for
was it
Disney?
was in Disney. So his company was called Zoo, ZOO,
Mm-hmm.
ZOO, and it was they were inside as vendors for Disney. So yes,
And
he
so
started working there.
and you started over again from zero as a
Mhm.
freelance.
Yeah, and to be honest, I again, more luck on my side is that usually when you get a visa for America, it's either, not usually, but most of the time, it's an H1 or an O1 visa. So
What does that mean?
yeah, it's I think the O1, and this is literally what it says on the legal form. It's alien with exceptional abilities. That is the O1. I think I might be wrong because it's either the H1 or the O1. And the H1, I think the H1 is one with it's like tech startups like Google. They'll get H1 visas for people who there's a lack of skills, so they'll get people from other countries to work at them. So What I was lucky about is because if you have an H1 or an O1 visa, your spouse is not allowed to work. So if you have a wife coming over or a husband, that person's not allowed to work. But my husband had an L1 visa, which is it's like a managerial type visa. And that means your spouse have an L2 visa. And with an L2 visa, you can work. So immediately I was already, super lucky that I can actually just, hit the ground running, even though it was for me like, I mean, I couldn't believe I'm in the city where all the companies that I always were, idolizing, I'm sure you, maybe as an architect, you also have these, the amazing ones that you would like to work with one day. They were all here in the city. So for me, it was very it's a little daunting too, because I know that they are super, they have really high standards and they're picky. So, and I know that my reel was really not good at all. Like I mean, it was actually really bad. And so what I did was, for the first month, I just started creating a new reel for myself. Like I learned a whole bunch of new skills. I didn't know Cinema 4D at that time, and if you look at our website, our whole website is, we use Cinema 4D quite a lot now. I just think I just try to create a reel that will hopefully get me the kind of jobs that I want. So that's how I kind of started. And then it started very slowly because nobody knew me. But with freelancing, it's kind of word of mouth. So you start a little company here, and then they have people that move to another company, and then they kind of spread the word. So it was a slow start, but it was it was really good, because at the end I did work at all the companies that I idolized, and it was pretty cool.
And so you started to be an employee again for one of those company, from what I understand.
Yeah, so this freelance work is very rewarding, because you do work on so many amazing projects and extremely talented people, and it's quite taxing on your life, because you always want to get better and better, and you always want to make sure they'll ask you to come back. And then when I got my I think it was my second son, trying to think of the days, the years, I just decided I want to a job that is a 9 to 5, and hopefully 9 to 5, and have more time with my kids. But I got a job as an art director at this company called Big Machine, and it was wonderful. They gave me a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of freedom. And it's a small company, so I had to wear a lot of hats, and I do think that's kind of where I got my. It's almost like that. If I can use a Karate Kid explanation, is like the wax on, wax off moment. It's really where I learned my chops in making design processes, making things faster, using all kinds of technology, and it's also where at that point. It's we worked on all kinds of things: television shows, sports graphics. Things are really short turnaround times.
But
And
what
it's
is
also,
you said you were art director.
so art director comes up with the overall look of a campaign or a broadcast package, or the vibe of the production. So, for example, if it's a channel brand, a rebrand of a channel, then the art director will come up with the direction, the rationale, the colors, the everything. And then in a small company like that company Big Machine I worked for, you're also in charge of managing everybody. Make sure that what they are doing is close to the look and the vision of the campaign. So whether it's a brand campaign, a promo for a television show, or actually graphics that are in a documentary. It's also where I color my business wife, Ming. She's my art director soulmate. It's also where we won an Emmy for Best Art Direction. So basically, we came up with a graphic look for a documentary called Future Cats. And it was all done in 3D. And it's all about the lighting and it was kind of abstract characters. And it was kind of like a very unique way because we had to create almost 40 minutes of pure animation. And we only had, I think, 2 months to produce everything. So that's a good example of how we came up with a system that is easy to render, easy to produce, but it still looks beautiful, and make 40 minutes in 2 months, which is kind of unusual and unheard of.
So just you very casually said that you won an Emmy.
A what?
What award did you say you won?
Oh, an Emmy award.
An Emmy award. So you are an Emmy award winner. I didn't know that. Again, another surprise because you said so casually. Yeah, and by the way, we won an Emmy, and
sorry. Yes, I actually thought you knew that. So yes. I I'll just casually mention it.
I have to tell you that you're very. I didn't have enough information to Google you because I've Googled. I found you by accident, as I told you, and then I didn't found any further information, and then you answered also a little later since the moment I've texted you. So I didn't Google you. I was super amazed that you answered to me.
Yeah.
So that was with the company which was called Big Machine.
Yes, yeah, and unfortunately they're not around anymore. But for me, that was really the time that I think I've learned sort of how to not just run a company, but I think the systems that you put in place to create animations and big things that are time consuming, how to, save time and make it easy and agile enough to flesh out.
I was wondering, you said that you've started working as an art director, and I was thinking, when you are the art director of an agency or a project, how much of your work is actual design or creation, and how much is management? Are you still very much involved in the design, or you're more the person that says, okay, you needed to do it more in this way or in that way, and you need to figure out this stuff, and then there is the design team which is actually executing all the operations?
No, it's very much hands-on, especially if you're in a company if you work at a company that's between 10 and 50 people. I think everybody I know is very hands-on. And basically, it's not like an art director, like an ad agency art director. I think they work slightly different. For a production company art director, you are literally opening up Cinema 4D and you're moving pixels and setting up renders. And then once you're happy with the look, then you give it to a bunch of freelancers, and they also have their own very talented skills of keeping that look, but also add a little bit of themselves into that project. So it's kind of you steer the ship into a creative direction, but you also give a little bit of freedom to people so that they can bring in their own little touches to shots or motion, or even just coming up with new elements for a campaign. So yeah, I would say an art director is probably the hardest work because the art director has to be involved in everything. It's like middle management, and we all know middle management is not fun.
I guess so, and I guess that involves a lot of hard work and extra hours. And how long have you been doing this job in that company?
So that was about 2 years. And then I just decided that I do want to spend more time with my family. And I decided that I'm going to try to do this, my own business thing. And to be honest, I decided to do the business because I wanted to create more time for myself. I was thinking, well, I'm going to have this business and I'm going to only work 6 months of the year and very hard. And then the rest of the months of the year, I'm going to go on world trips or go to South Africa. But it doesn't always work out like that. But that was the initial thought of why I want to start Martian and Sons.
So you've been working as a you moved 2006, you said, to the US, and then you've been working as a freelance as an art director. And the time you won your Emmy was in a time frame of around 10 years, because you said the Some Martians and Sons is from
Yeah.
2015.
Yes, I think the Emmy was 2015. I think I have to go look on the date.
Is there a video of you receiving the Emmy?
No, the Emmy was in New York and we were in Los Angeles. And it was not the Emmy like you see the glamorous people on the red carpet. It was not the primetime Emmy. This was a daytime. It was a documentary Emmy. So it was a different location in New York, and the producer, one of our producers, she went to get the Emmy.
I see. I can imagine, because I always tell also, I think I've already told that on the podcast, but originally I'm from Bulgaria, which is a country very much involved into animation, CGI, everything involved with computer graphics, because one of the main render engine companies, Vray, I don't know if you use that.
Oh yes, yeah, I know
Also in
Vray.
your, yeah, Vray, it's based in Sofia in Bulgaria, and it's a Bulgarian company. And then I think they won a couple of years ago an Oscar for an animation short movie or something like this. And there was I saw a video of them getting the Oscar, but it wasn't the same Oscar where you see all the Hollywood stars and the glamorous party.
Yeah, there are, so I think that was a technical Oscar, and I know what you mean because I have some friends who won some technical Oscars, and it's not as glamorous as you think, and I even think it's in the daytime. It's not even in the nighttime. It's very the people behind the screens is not always so taken
But
on that.
it was very, very broadcasted in Bulgaria, because Bulgaria is a small country with 6 million people. And for that small market to have this big achievement, it was on all news and all media. And it, to me, it wasn't that surprising, because I knew already about V-Ray and about the story and about the company. And I have a lot of friends that are working in that field. So yeah. And so you started Martian and Sons with the idea that you were gonna chill a lot more, but what happened? Because I think that from what I'm not an entrepreneur, maybe in the future, but from what I know, it's that that's even, I think I see it myself from my bosses, because I see that if I leave the office and I can leave the work problems at the office, the managers and the owners cannot do that, because the problems are always with you.
Yeah, man, it is hard work, I have to say. It's rewarding, but I have to wear so many hats. I'm basically the technical director and the financial guy, and then I have to get, it's really not just in the beginning. It was really me and Kendall, my partner, and Drew doing a lot. So luckily now we can source some of the things out, but it's not for the faint at heart. But I do say I still go to South Africa for 3 months sometimes of the year. So you can't do that working full time. So I'm grateful that I have some flexibility, and I can actually see my kids more and my family.
But how you manage to do that? Because you have a partner, so in the months you leave the company for 2-3, I don't know how long you leave to South Africa, and you leave the whole thing in charge of I don't know if it's a her or a him, and then you come back, and then you come back to help the company, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
So I never switch off. I mean, I am in South Africa and I am there for a long time, but I'm still on calls at 11 o'clock at night. and sometimes I take my computer with me so that I can work. We try, and over December, we usually have a very empty time. Not empty, but it's not that busy for Martian and Sons. So December is a month that I try to go every other year. And because my kids are now in school, I kind of have to work at around July. Before they were in school, I didn't have to do it. But now, because school has summer off in June and July, that is the ideal time to leave. But that's also our very busy time. So it's not as, I would say, I'm not doing the 3 months anymore. But in the beginning, I could easily go through 3 months because my kids didn't have to go to school.
And I'm curious, what was the needed investment and the needed organization to get start a company like Martian and Sons? And here, I'm not curious about the exact numbers. I'm more curious about maybe rough numbers to start officially Martian and Sons. It's what kind of agency? Is like digital art, or what is called animation? Digital animation.
Yeah, so we see ourselves as experiential designers, and we are a bunch of animators, designers, and developers who who helps brands create digital experiences for events. So right now, our events could be a live event or a virtual event. The last few months, we actually worked on a lot of virtual elements for Microsoft. So I would say our wedge is events and the digital experiences on it. And
what is a virtual element?
Yeah, so so usually if it's a live event, we will be designing and animating anything that's on a big screen that is like the open of an event, or the elements that they use to cut from a live broadcast back to the studio, or from a live broadcast back to the stage. So those are all animated elements that's needed for a live event. But since there are no live events anymore, for example, Microsoft, let me just use that as an example. They have a studio in Redmond where their campus is, and that studio needed virtual sets. So the virtual sets is basically 3D designed architectural abstract elements that's used on an LED screen behind presenters. And then every day, because it was a 3-day event, every day it gets changed out to a different look. So it's either abstract, just cubes in the background, or it's an actual lobby, fake lobby. It had different times of days. It had different scenery, like there was windows where you can see different horizons, like cityscapes or nature or abstract graphics. It was quite exciting. I mean, we literally just finished that 3 days ago, so I'm still kind of on a like a hangover, like a work hangover, not an alcohol hangover, because I'm because this hard work. But
yeah, I hope you don't get you don't use alcohol to boost your working abilities. Yeah, that's why also it was a little for you. I hope I didn't stress you too much with the organization of the podcast, because I in my industry, in the architecture industry, we have also super tight deadlines. So I know what you feel, and I had a deadline at work myself. Just a week before yours, so for me was the same. I was like, yeah, don't worry, I know what you mean, and it's not there is no rush. But how do you acquire a client like Microsoft? How did that happen?
So I think it's all about connections and who you know, and also just doing great work and having a little bit of word of mouth. But with this specific client, again, we were very lucky that our business partner, Drew, he used to work for a company called PXP, which is Publicis Experiences. And Publicis, or Publicis, is a big ad agency that has a lot of ad agencies underneath them. And they had an RFP going out, and an RFP is like a request for proposal. So they get a whole bunch of companies to send a proposal to do motion graphics for Microsoft. And he asked us if we want to throw our hat in the ring as well. And I said yes. So we made a proposal. And I think we were up against quite a lot of companies, and quite big ones and small ones. And yeah, we got the job. So we worked for a year with PXP, our agency. And then after the one event, the client, Microsoft, actually came directly to me and asked if we want to do a next event that's coming, one of their big pillar flagship events. And I felt kind of like it's kind of strange, but we took on one of the events without having an agency in between, and it worked out really well. And then from there on, we were just directly connected with Microsoft without having an agency in the middle.
That sounds really cool, because if you have gotten a direct contact with Microsoft, that means you actually have done a great job. So did that open like now the possibility for a serial of works for your agency with Microsoft, also because you kind of now know what kind of work they expect and what is their you're building up for them a style, you can imagine.
Yeah, it really opens up a lot, but also it made me realize what our strengths are. And I really love the fact that we have such a direct connection with our client, that we are super agile. Like usually, I don't know if you know how agency work, but usually a production company gets a brief from an agency, and then the production company comes up with all these looks. Then they send it to the agency. The agency send notes back and forth, back and forth. And then the agency presents it to Microsoft or the client. So it's almost like 2 weeks of work that you only get feedback after 2 weeks of work. But now we are, I'm basically Teams chatting with our client, and we're getting ideas, and we go back and forth with the client and up with ideas. And it's very rough, and it's like sprinting basically, and just kind of brainstorming, having a sandpit with ideas. And then we pick a few and then run with it, and just short little sprints and see how it works and come back. So it's not that long agency thing of waiting and paying somebody to do some looks that's not going to go very far. So for me, that system just works really well. So for me, I would ideally not like to work through an agency, but I think we're just lucky. I think not everybody has this casual relationship with a client, but I do think clients really love that and value it.
And what is the need of an agency in the process generally? Because if it's just another, let's say, notch in the communication, which can create some misunderstandings, and generally, what's so useful in the process of having an agency between you and the clients? Because the agency are the one that taking care of connecting with a lot of producers to create this sort of competition for a project, and that's too much for a company that just need an end product. Or what is the
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I do think agencies are starting to change their business model, because they do, especially during COVID, a lot of agencies are closing or getting, getting rid of some of their really talented people. But the agency has the relationship with the client. And usually agencies have big clients, because usually that's how they have, the CEOs go play golf together. I'm guessing that's how they get their how they befriend all these clients. So they have also a bunch of researchers. So they do back everything up with research and demographic, charts and things that we as a production company don't want to do, or we don't need to do. So a lot of times agencies, that's what they're there for. They get tasks to do certain things to basically sell products. So they need to know, who are they selling to? What is that demographic like? Where do they go and watch videos, commercials? So I would say that is the agency to steer the messaging. And then agencies don't have really a production team. So then they send out to a bunch of production houses RFPs like they did with us. And then we pitch to show them how we will take that message and put our spin on it, our creative spin. So I do think agencies might, I think they're going to get smaller and maybe a little bit more. I think there's a word, they say it's a fluid agency, or there's a word for it, but where they have also a bunch of freelancers working for them, not full time, maybe smaller offices where they can just get the people for the right expertise for a job.
I see. And how do you think this pandemic, which is pushing into a revolution in basically all the different industry, will change your own company? Or if it will change your company somehow, or how it had already changed it? If you can,
Yeah.
if you have noticed something.
Oh, yes. I mean, when it started, when we were in lockdown, I got very nervous because all of a sudden, we do live events. So that is like the one thing that will never be happening this year or maybe even next year. So I think we are just grateful that we have a company. We work with Microsoft and all the live events turned into virtual events. So that's already a big change. I I love the idea. I love that we already, as a company, we always were in the cloud. We were always, we have lots of artists and designers, animators all over the world. So we already were working as if we're working from home. So I think it's just enforcing the fact that that we were doing the right thing. I think we will just diversify into other avenues, and I'm not sure what yet. At the end, we do animation and design and branding, so everybody still needs that, and I can see how a lot of things will move more towards social media, and since all the virtual events are kind of connected to social media, I think we will still have jobs coming in, hopefully.
But do you think that it will be also, I can imagine that, for example, what you have produced so far as content for a live event can turn into the environment of the live event? And I'm meaning because virtual reality will be the next step, I think, in
Yes.
our society. So do you think that in the next 10 years, companies like yours will need to focus um, on not only building these virtual elements for an event, but actually building the event?
Yes,
Because
and
it will
actually
be just
it's
a
cool that
virtual.
yeah, and it's cool that you say that because we are actually actively researching now. We have a big team of with Unreal Engine guys that we use for our interactive projects. And it used to be Unity, but with Unreal Engine, it's just so much more powerful. And we are now in R&D phase where we want to see how we can push these beautiful environments we built for this Microsoft event. How can we just plug in maybe a camera and a sensor, and maybe that camera can follow the presenter, for example, or maybe it could become, a virtual set online where a attendee can come and walk around or interact with some of the elements in the scene. So we are definitely actively looking into that.
And I'm curious, you said you work in sort of a cloud organization. You have been doing that already before the whole COVID-19 situation, and that you work also with a freelancer all around the world. From which countries are your collaborators, and what can a freelance do to you? Because I'm wondering, how do you combine this final result, which is a result of a teamwork, but actually decentralized to different people who are working on their own?
Yeah, so we have, they're from all over the place, Bangladesh, Poland, Turkey, Manchester, all over America. I usually pick somebody who has a good time. Well, I first look at their portfolio and see what they can do, but I like the time zone too, where they work at night when we're sleeping, and then we can take over the files when we are awake. And it works really well for our pipeline because it makes us extremely fast, and we can quickly change and turn around changes and set up renders. So I usually what I do, and to be honest, it's my favorite thing to do is to find talent. Every time I'm on Instagram and I see somebody doing something amazing, I'll save it in my talent folder, and I'm on Behance and Dribble, and sometimes I see somebody doing something cool, and we don't have a project for that yet, but I will make sure that I make a note of what they can do, if it's a WebGL thing or Houdini or some particle simulation or whatever. I'll always keep that in mind. And then I honestly don't, whatever software they're using doesn't really stop me from trying to tap into their talent. We have a very specific stack, and we're using C4D and Octane and After Effects, the ones I mentioned before. But like, for example, if we need a Houdini artist, they'll create their magic in Houdini. And our team here in America is very, the ones in our time zone, is very generalist. So they are really good with picking up anything that we give and convert it to our pipeline. So I think, what was the question again?
No, it was the question, like that wasn't the question. You actually answered, because you said that you receive this work from these decentralized talents you find, and then your team, which is there in America, then take cares of building the pieces together, from what I understood.
Yeah, but we do have we have 3 animators, Poland, Bangladesh, and the Netherlands, and they are part of our team. So they're also helping with the actual process as well, the production. So when I get
but they work on their own, and they're like self-employed in their own countries. They just collaborate with you.
Yes.
And do you pick the country only based on the talent, or also because combined with the talent, I can imagine that somebody that works in Bangladesh or in Poland has a very, very good prices for his services or her services?
Yeah, I would say talent is first, because if someone is very cheap and they're not good, we're going to have to do it 3 times before it's right. So I usually look at talent first, and then usually I don't even know where they're from until I speak to them or until I really dig into their, Behance or somewhere where I can see where they're from. So yeah, talent is very important for me, number one.
Yeah, I guess, of course, that you have to keep your work quality on a certain level, because if you want to work with clients which are like Microsoft or other, I don't know if you have worked with other big companies, you need to have that level of quality. It's
yes, no, exactly, yeah.
just not possible. But I was also wondering how, because I can imagine that to create this so flawless products you do, because if people go to for example, what I've seen, it's the material on the Instagram page of Martians and Sons, you can see these very easy looking, very flawless short animations. I guess that they're the result of a lot of work and a big process. How much yourself technically about all the process? Do you always have to have in control the technical knowledge, or there are people in the team which are actually more skilled than you in a technical sense of the process, and then you're more the manager?
I actually know all the technical details. So I love it. That's why I know it. I think if I didn't like it, I would probably ask somebody else. But I'm also in charge of building our machines. So I know what graphics cards we need, and if I don't have a good graphics card, my render doesn't work. So I won't say I'm the best. No, I read up a lot and I go to blogs to find out these technical specs, and I'm sure there's dudes out there and girls who are better than me, but I do have a good solid foundation on the technical aspect of things.
And so, as you're, I think, so good in these technical aspects, if you want to say, like, if there is somebody that's a young designer and wants to get involved into this kind of media, do you think is there a world leading school you should go to, like university, or if it's more you need to learn it by yourself? And if you need to learn it by yourself, what should people focus on learning?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, to be honest, nobody has ever asked me in America what degree I have. Never. I've only had to send my reel, and that's how I got a job. But I think it's really good to start with a college that can at least give you that theoretical background, the just like the thought process of how to start a design and how to have a rationale behind your ideas. And I find it sometimes I can clearly see if someone doesn't have that background, because they just make pretty stuff that doesn't have a reason. So I love it when someone actually comes with a thought process behind something. Other than that, I do think everything I know, I did not learn at university. I've learned everything on YouTube. And I don't even think I did any paid courses. Everything was free. So yeah, it's very easy nowadays to just open up YouTube and learn something new.
I have this method of learning. For example, when I want to play around with a new software, I just open the software and start doing something that I want to design. And during the process of doing it, I figure out what I need to learn in that software.
Yeah.
So I go into Google and I Google the exact, like, how to make a window in that different software. And then there is one guy in the world that have made one video of 30 seconds on YouTube,
I know
which
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
which explains this one simple operation. And there are people who even do like videos about how to copy and paste in Word, which is to me very amazing. I think we have reached a saturation of media
Yeah.
content on the internet, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
No. Yeah,
and
it's amazing. Like some even now, being a motion graphics designer, sometimes I find it's interesting that there are people that don't know 3D, but it's so important to know 3D a little bit. You don't need to know a lot, but this is it's just so everybody I know is super talented and have all these skills. So it's difficult to stand out if you don't have all these skills. So it's a bit of pressure too, all this free information, but yeah, I guess it's also how you use it.
And then we have also this hustler mentality. I think, especially in America, it's even stronger, where you are kind of, you need to work so hard to be successful. So all the people that are constantly working hard will gather this big amount of knowledge. So you need to keep up with the competition, otherwise you'll be out of job. But
Yeah.
you mentioned you need to have this base of college which teaches you design. But what kind of design? Because, for example, I am a designer too, but I design buildings, which is a different way of designing. Or is my knowledge of designer, even in the architectural field, theoretically enough to be the base for moving into motion graphics?
Oh yes, I actually would say it's 100% translatable, because especially if you're doing what we're doing, we're working with light and flow and negative space, and I think the design principles are similar. And to be honest, a lot of people I know who were architects are now motion graphics designers. And I even have a friend who's a lighter at DreamWorks who used to be an architect. So I think it's that that virtual space that you are creating that is either fantastical or it's realistic. So I think there's definitely a crossover. When it comes to typography and color and all that, that's definitely something you will need to learn if you don't have that under your belt, because that I think that is kind of how you can see if someone is a good, that kind of take the good designers from the bad designers if they don't have the knowledge of good typography, color, and layout. Even if it's an animation, you kind of need to know proportions and scale and all that.
Of course, because maybe I need a little bit of cinematography too to know the composition of the
Oh yes,
different
absolutely.
frames.
Yeah.
But I think that, for example, I'm my background. I don't know people that have studied, for example, graphic design. I know people that have studied industrial design. But as an architect, you need to know, you get a general knowledge of everything, but you don't get actually actively taught at school. Just your professor gives you assignment that just to complete what they're expecting from you, you need to put so many hours into researching yourself how it works. And I've been talking to one of my last guests about he worked at a leading office, architectural office, world leading office, OMA, and he told me that he was from a small university and he worked with people from the most famous university like Harvard. And I told him, like, I think that the best asset you can have, as you said, nobody asks you for your degree. It's because the biggest asset you can have as a creative is just your passion and this sort of I call it sort of investigative journalism, where you start from one software and you kind of go through all the different options and look at works of others and try to repeat the process, and then you learn from your
Yeah, exactly.
trying and failing.
Yeah, exactly. It's that word curiosity is so important, and I think that's what also makes the good ones stand out, because they don't stop at one place and they keep pushing it to another level. Like when we come up with a brand for, like, again, just to bring it, for example, the Microsoft one, we have to show a concept, and the concept is tech intensity. That was one of the themes for a day. But how do you show tech intensity by just using cubes? That's what they told us. We can only use cubes. So it's you kind of have to start playing around. Okay, what does tech intensity mean? Now you have to go into IoT and research what IoT is, and we had to kind of go back from what is this whole the stack that Microsoft is building their platform on. We really have to dig deep. And then only from there we could kind of now understand what does tech intensity mean. So it's really, and that part is what I've learned at college, at university. So yeah.
But what is roughly your creative process? So you get this assignment that I can imagine it's like um, maybe a short description from the agency you are working with or from Microsoft, which maybe tells you, I don't know, what will be the mood, what is the topic. Maybe in your case, there will be some colors of Microsoft, and then they tell you need to use cubes. So from there, how you start? You start first on paper, like sketching ideas or describing ideas. What is the process behind?
Yeah. So usually when they send us a brief, we do a lot of research. We read up what is exactly, so we don't get it wrong, because that is always the worst thing if you come up with initial sketches even and you didn't grasp the concept. So sometimes it's very difficult. It's like technology, and sometimes it's just easy and you already know the product because you use it every day. It all depends on what level you need to go deeper in. And then I would say it starts with just mood boards. First, just get ideas, like a lot. Like we spend at least 2 days just finding, and we call it buckets of concepts. So anything between 7 and 8 buckets of concepts. And we take all the things we love and we think works in a concept, and we put it in that bucket so that it makes a coherent concept, so we can kind of have a rationale for that concept. So say it is I'm just going to make an example. Say the bucket is called collaboration. So we go out and find imagery, visuals that we think works with the word collaboration. Like even if it's, something abstract, it could be human, it could be something we found on the street, the photo. It's not just finding it on the internet. We literally sketch, build. It's really the fun part, actually. And then once we have that 7 or 8 buckets, we whittle it down to 3 really good concepts. And we can actually write a rationale around it. Why did we pick these images? What's the color significance? How does it correlate with the messaging that they want to show? And then from there, we'll sometimes just present the found objects or the mood board. Or if there is some budget, we can actually spend time and start making some mood boards. But usually I would like to first start the conversation with the client to make sure that we're in the right direction. Because I think, again, that is sometimes the problem where people go and pitch a whole bunch of ideas, but then they might have missed the mark completely. So I think it's always good to start with first just a loose conversation starter with a client, just to kind of pick their brain, make sure you hit the road running on the right direction. And then once we have the 3 directions, we'll start making mood boards and show how the motion could work, or we do experiments in Houdini or Cinema 4D, or get materials that we think might be a good work. It's just kind of, then that's kind of the fun bit still, the R&D. And once we nail the look, then we flesh it out into a storyboard, because now we have to tell a story, and we have usually beat points. So it's either we know where the 5 things we need to say or do, and then we first do those, and then we start filling in the in-betweens. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. It was actually a very, very precise description of your process. And then when you complete your process, you hand it to your, in case of Microsoft, you give it directly to Microsoft. And then in the other cases, you hand it to the agency. And then the agency feedback what you have done so far, right?
Yes, correct. Agencies usually have a lot of notes and a lot of people on the calls, like 20 people on one call, and everybody always had something to say. So that's kind of nice when you don't have an agency and you just go straight to the client. And usually there's also like 20 people on the call, but at least less people have as the creative director. So it's kind of with the, getting less notes. But it also depends, because, when we do interactive projects, we start with, like a wireframe and a prototype. That's just black and white touch, click through. And then sometimes the client will make straight notes on there. Each job is very different. It's not always the same. Some jobs... No, I think at the end, the conceptual side always is the same. It's just what kind of job it is how we bring it down to the final product.
I think that from what I've learned so far through this podcast, because I've interviewed different creatives, most of them were related closely to architecture, but also in other fields. And it's very similar in every creative process. It's very similar. It's like this natural selection of ideas, and then the natural, like some ideas survive, some other die, and then it's this final idea, which is the final, the last idea standing. And now that you have completed your big assignment for Microsoft, you have a little time where it's a little more relaxing, or what comes next for your company, for Martian and Sons?
We're always busy, so we always keep moving forward. We have a few clients that are now we're doing proposals for, that is not really event specific. It's more just web presence. A lot of clients do not have any toolkits or things they can use for social media, or for even just to put on their website. So we're working on that. And then, so one of our partners, Kendall, who is also my husband, he's very technical, and he's busy building us a platform to help us creating web apps and VR apps that is just using Python. And we want to create this app that other people can use. So it will be almost like the Squarespace of making your own app. So we've always been working on that. We've been working on that for about 5 months now, and it's now at a prototype, or it's now at a place where we actually have one client that is using our software. So I'm hoping that one of those are going to become almost a standalone company, our products, so that we have a good balance of service and products that we can offer.
That sounds interesting, and sounds also it shows how future oriented it's Martian and Sons, and how innovative sounds.
Yeah, I think you have to be like, especially since motion and interactivity is totally woven together now, and 3D and real-time rendering. I think we're in a good position that we can really go any direction, and we're small enough and agile enough that we can experiment and have fun and still do what we're doing now, but be flexible and do other things. So I'm very excited. I mean, I know COVID is horrible and people are suffering, but I think it just kind of gave us an injection to it was almost moved us forward much faster than we thought we would go.
Yeah, I think that this virus was sort of a pause in our personal life and relationship. What was this sort of boost of the speed of innovation of many industries, which for example, the architectural industry, it's very conservative in terms of flexibility of work and innovation, and now they were so forced from this external factor, which nobody expected. But I'm also very, very curious to see how things will develop, and I'm very glad. I'm very excited that you have accepted to take some of your weekend time to tell me your amazing story. And I think it was very inspiring how you started from a small town in South Africa, and you achieved so much, and you arrived to LA. And I think this is all what it is about, to tell the story of people like you, that nobody it's born the way they are. They had this very long story behind to get the to where they are now, and that you need to invest a lot of time and work and passion into your craft and into your skills. So I don't want to take you further away from your kids on a Sunday. I'm very happy that we had this very friendly conversation. And I'm very happy that you accepted, despite all the hardship we have into an intercontinental also time difference conversation. I want to give you like some time to give to tell the audience where can they find more about you, Martian and Sons, and check your work, and maybe get in touch with you.
Yeah. So, well, thanks. First of all, thank you so much for contacting me. I think that just shows you how small the world is, and you can just DM anybody on Instagram and they might come back to you. So I think that's just, kudos to you to come out and reach out to us. Thank you very much for having me on. If people want to get in touch with me, our Instagram, you can DM me there. Martian and Sons is our Instagram handle. We also have a website, martianandsons.com, and LinkedIn. I do have a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn, but I am Elizabeth J. Steinberg at LinkedIn. You can find me there as well.
Don't tell that about LinkedIn. It's a Microsoft company.
No, I know. That's why I'm saying love-hate relationship.
I'm joking. So for all the listeners, they will find all the links to your pages in the description of this episode. And I want to remind them one more time that the podcast is completely free and it's very fun to do. And I get to speak to very cool people like you, but it would be nice of the people if they take just a few minutes of time to go on Instagram, follow TCI Podcast, or on LinkedIn and Facebook, the Creative Insider pages. And if you like the podcast, just feel free to share with family, friends, and subscribe. And thank you very much for listening. And thank you to Elizabeth one more time.
Thank you very much.
Bye and stay safe.
Just like that. Just like that.